We begin today with breaking news.
Traffic is backed up. There's an accident on the freeway.
About a dozen downtown businesses were boarded up Wednesday.
And in business, the stock market fell through the floor
Two
today.
nights of protests over the police shooting of an unarmed black man.
This is a regular affair for the president who has
Have you
spent
been
many
wondering how
hours.
safe is the beef here at home?
It's a mad world. Ooh, yeah. Welcome.
You should have heard what Los was saying before the podcast started recording. He was saying dirty things.
No, I was saying thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning into Mad
I
World.
misheard you then.
The show that tries to make sense of all this wackiness, this craziness, this looniness that's happening here in this mad world we're living in. And throughout the course of this show, we'll try and figure out where to go from here. And I'm one of your hosts. My name is Los, aka your friendly neighborhood Los, aka the artist formerly known as Los Stevens. And as always, I'm joined by the world's oldest millennial, your boy. What's your name?
I'm Free Speech Bertram. I can say whatever I want. I stand for free speech, Los. Did you know that?
Oh,
You know I'm a pillar in the community of free speech. That's what I say. That's what I tell people. They say, "What do you stand for, Bertram?" I say, "I stand for free speech." Right? This is America. You say what you want here. Free speech means sometimes you get offended. Right? Hey everyone, how's it going?
I see where you're going. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Before we get started, just in case, you want to know when new episodes drop, feel free to press subscribe or follow, whichever button is applicable on the podcast app you're listening to this fine show. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram. We're on Reddit. Follow us. madmadworldpod is where you could find us. You could go to our website, madmadworldpod.com, to see listen to all our old episodes, look at all of our show notes. We try and format them, give you all of our sources as best as possible, including this episode. So if you are happening to be walking or sitting around leisurely in your living room or bathroom, no judgments there, you can go ahead, take a look in the show notes and see everything that we've cited here on this episode.
Is that you, Los? You listen to the podcast in the bathroom?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Man, that's where I get my best thinking done. What else am I supposed to think about?
Yeah, if you're driving, look at it later. They'll be there. But yeah, Bertram, what was the most exciting thing that you bought in the last week or so?
Well, I'm perennially broke, so I don't buy anything, Los.
You don't buy it?
I guess I bought some licorice at the dollar store.
Okay. What was your last
You saw some of that.
What was shout outs to Wiley Wallaby. Wiley Wallaby
man.
is some of the best store-bought licorice on the market today.
Don't give it away for free, baby. Come on, we want to make them pay for it.
Australian style licorice, which they do not sponsor us, but they should, because we will be your biggest champions. Shout outs to Wiley Wallaby.
Oh yeah.
Licorice.
Hey, if you don't know anything about Australian licorice, if you're eating Twizzlers right now, you throw those in the trash. You go get yourself Australian licorice. It's fatter and it's softer and it's got so much more flavor. Get yourself some Australian licorice anywhere. Just search Australian licorice. Go ahead.
Yeah,
it's on us.
Please.
And if you use the promo code Bertram, you'll get 50% off your first order for Australian licorice.
Maybe we should start a Patreon specifically so people could fund our licorice addictions.
Hey man, you're addicted, not me. I can quit anytime I want. All right, I don't like your attitude.
Yeah, I am an addict for sure. But okay, what about your last big purchase?
A big purchase?
Yeah, big purchase.
A bowling ball.
A bowling ball. Yeah, you had your high-tech bowling ball.
You know how much it cost?
How much it cost?
$44 billion. That's
Oh,
not true.
well, yeah,
But nice segue.
That is a nice segue to today's episode. Our topic
Sorry, I
today
apologize.
is our guy Elon Musk,
Ooh, no.
the extraordinaire Tesla co-founder, CEO, SpaceX co-founder, CEO, Solar
That
City.
other one. What's the other company?
There was Solar City, which Tesla bought. There's the Boring Company.
The Boring Company. Yeah, I love that. That's a great name.
That's great. Their tagline too, "We bore. That's what we do."
I'm in.
And way back in the day, co-founder of PayPal, Elon Musk, decided in the past couple weeks that, man, Twitter, the social media network, if you didn't know, Twitter is just, man, it's our de facto town square, and lately it's just been a little too woke, and all this content moderation has gone a little too far, and there's just no room as a platform for free speech. So he decided he's going to do something about it. At first, it started with a 9% stake that he purchased in Twitter.
How long ago was that he bought that?
That was around a month ago. Yeah, a month ago from today.
He got his beak wet a little bit, and then he decided he wanted the whole cake.
And then he said, forget about all of this. I want to buy the entire thing. And so
hook it to my vein is what he said.
He approached Twitter and offered to buy them for $54.20 a share in stock. Notice Elon Musk has a proclivity to make either 420 references in many of his stuff, or sex references. You know, the original name of the first three vehicles of the Tesla line were supposed to be E, and X, but E was taken by Ford, so he did 3.
Jesus.
But yeah, in Tesla stock, he offered the company and its shareholders to buy it up for $54.20, which amounted to just over $43 billion. If you didn't know, Elon Musk currently is the wealthiest man in the world right now, with a net worth just north of $200 billion. And so the offer,
eat the rich. Continue. Sorry.
The offer was on the table, and at first they declined in a certain way. They did what's known in the corporate world as a poison pill, which means that it limits any shareholder from controlling 15% stake in the company, to keep anyone with a voting interest out of it, to avoid a stock sale like this. But as time progressed, a week or so progressed, the stock price of Twitter was hovering below like $47. So internally, they were having discussions, looking at other potential buyers, and that market was empty. And so they managed to reach an agreement with Elon Musk so he could buy the entire company by himself, out of his pockets. Not completely out of his pockets. We'll talk about that more later. But yeah, that's essentially what happened. Elon Musk has reached an agreement to buy Twitter for $44 billion. And that is assuming the shareholders agree to it. That's expected to go through later on this year. And Twitter will be exclusively under his control. They will then become a privately held company. And Mr. Musk will be the boss. So Bertram, we've been avoiding talking about this privately for just about a week now. And I want to know, what were some of your thoughts? What was your reaction to reading that news.
I didn't know how to contextualize buying Twitter because I assumed Twitter is this awesome thing. I mean, I guess it's a big company. So I have a Vox article that kind of goes into it a little bit that really helped kind of make sense of it. But, man, it comes off the heels of these billionaires going into space, right? Where
I knew you were going there.
Billionaires are becoming supervillains, Los. And I used to like Elon, and I guess I'm not gonna say I don't like it because I don't know about you, man, but I'm super inconsistent as a human being. Some days I'm like, oh yeah, this is me, this is Bertram right now, and then a week later I'm like, wait a minute, those things I thought were Bertram were just kind of a flash in the pan. You know what I mean? Because we're constantly all changing and our perspectives are changing. So I don't know what to make of Elon Musk, if he's a real bad guy or anything, because the media wants to tell me that he's a super villain. But then, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. You and I talk all the time about, like, we get on left wing for why you guys lose all the time. We get on right wing for obvious reasons.
Being fascist.
Wow, that's not even the tip of the iceberg. You were being kind there. But one thing I'd like to get on about these billionaires is they want to sit here and say, well, the government shouldn't control my money. And Elon's always said, well, I know I can control my money way better than the federal government can. I go, well, then why don't you do it? Like, he wants to sit here and he talks a big game like, man, I could end world hunger. Why don't you do it then, you piece of shit? Oh, sorry.
Whoa.
Ooh, man.
It's
Miss
funny
Pidlet almost lost. Miss Pidlet almost lost her temper.
It's funny you mentioned that because the girlfriend and I were just talking about that, how late last year, Elon Musk tweeted to the UN that if they could give him a detailed plan on how he could end world hunger with his wealth, he would cash out his Tesla stock right away. And after some exchanges in a couple weeks, the World Food Program came out with this plan that wasn't directly addressed to Elon Musk, but it was addressed to billionaires on how they can help. They put out a plan with numbers, and there were tables of what billion would
Katie
go
Porter.
here, what billion would go there, and that was supposed to be their offer, and Elon Musk never got back to them. But you and I, right, over the course of this show, we've expressed our skepticism towards governmental or intergovernmental distribution of aid and funds for programs.
Government messes everything up.
Exactly. And
You want something done wrong, you give it to your government. They'll find a way to do it perfectly messed up.
And so I think that's the barrier when you say we could end world hunger, because it's like, how would you, same thing with homelessness. Like, how would you do it? How would you do it? Even if you know exactly what you need, you also need the stakeholders involved to act exactly how you think they would act. Because, there's that process there. So I do understand the hesitance and reluctance to not donate to, those types of funds right there. But,
man, Elon could move to Flint, Michigan and go fix the water there, baby.
Okay. But,
That'd be something nice to do.
But companies,
Would it not?
Companies buy companies all the time. What? And the whole thing
He's
about
not a company, he's a man.
Yeah, but what's the problem with a man? What's the difference between a man buying a company and a company buying a company?
It's a corporate acquisition. I guess for this problem is,
but
this
it's
dude
not.
is
Yeah,
the
but
dude's
it's not
the dude's intentions for buying it. He's telling everybody he's doing it for free speech, and I've put a lot of articles in the show notes where they're just like, this guy's clearly full of it, right?
But is he?
What? He's allowed to buy a company, but it's not a very good company to buy, apparently. And I was gonna say your ideology is flawed from the beginning anyway, because you likened Twitter to the town square, and that's not the town square anymore, because it's a I guess it's a publicly traded company, but the town square is something where everybody can come to it, whereas Twitter, not everybody gets invited. You have to have an account.
Yeah, but anyone could sign up for an account.
Yeah, but then you have to agree to the terms and conditions.
But then you have to agree to the terms and conditions.
Which I guess you have to do in a town square, right?
Yeah.
You have to agree not to go in and murder everybody, right?
Exactly. Those are the
But
laws.
it's public
That's what they call it.
space. It's public space.
Yeah.
Like you could go down to your park and you could be like, "Hey, I want to have a hot dog cookout here next Friday," and if it's available, look at like Parks and Rec. They do that on Parks and Rec all the time, right?
Yeah. Isn't with Parks and Rec a lot
Can't
of
do
the
that
time?
on Twitter.
You need permits. You need permission. Yeah. So
You're starting to ruin this, Los.
he used the word de facto, right?
I did.
No, he did. Elon Musk has said it's a de facto town square. Which, yeah, Elon Musk argues that it is because in this digital age, no one is walking outside like the 18th century and expressing their thoughts and feelings in front of a bunch of others who are trying to do the same thing.
You don't do that. I do that.
You don't walk
I do that
out
every day.
You don't walk out into the park and talk to strangers and just express
Every day, Los.
Every day.
Every day.
What's the name of the town square that you go to?
Frederick Douglass Park.
Oh, Frederick.
It's right down the street, my friend.
They know you.
I do it as I walk down the street.
Okay.
I walk down the street to Frederick Douglass Park, and I say whatever I want. If you got a problem with that, Los, you got a problem with America, because that's what we do here.
That's what we do. Okay, and so
Do you want to talk? Okay.
Go ahead.
Do you want to go into what exactly qualifies as free speech?
Well, yeah, we could get into that. So yeah, and it's important to note, right? So Elon Musk, and this is why we try and do this here on Mad World, is that there are conflicting opinions as to what Elon Musk's motivations are, their interpretations of his interpretations of free speech. So we want to just lay it all out in front of y'all. So that's what we're doing here. And as it pertains to free speech, what Elon Musk said, and in the show notes, I'll have his TED Talk that came just on the heels of him offering to buy Twitter. It was before they actually agreed, but
yeah,
it was right around the time he offered to buy Twitter. And he explained that he would, if he owned Twitter, which he soon will, he would base the free speech policies based on the law in which that country's in. So there's varying degrees of free speech per country, because part of his critique was that our platforms, or digital platforms, whether that be Twitter or Facebook or any of these other social media channels, they don't seem to reflect the laws of free speech. They seem to be sort of constricting them even more so than the law permits. And my argument has always been similar to Bertram's. They're a privately held company. I've always said, if Twitter wants to restrict you from mentioning cupcakes, they can do so, because that's them. They're in control of their own selves. The government has no sway into those affairs. So they could keep you from saying cupcakes. They could keep you from speaking about lemonade, whatever. They could do that if they wanted to. But the way that he's saying is that since the town square, comparison, right? That, these are the platforms in which we express our thoughts. So why should it be so constricting or restrictive?
Yeah. There's an article I put from The Hill that says Elon Musk's Twitter free speech mirage. And it says, by every measure, Elon Musk is a brilliant entrepreneur, but a trustworthy arbiter of free speech? I think not. Musk boasts his purchase of Twitter is designed to return Twitter to its glory days as a 280-character free speech fortress where users could post whatever their whim with no consequences to them or to Twitter. Easy to promise, impossible to deliver. And it says, in the hoopla surrounding Musk's bold free speech narrative, let us not forget that it didn't take long after Twitter was created in 2006 for its executives to find out that there are a lot of bad actors who easily began hijacking Twitter to spread hate incite terrorism, empower autocrats, facilitate sex trafficking, and enable criminal enterprises, just to name a few of the Twitter transgression realities requiring constant in-house content moderation. What do you make of that, Los?
Well, it's someone's opinion, right? But what they're
but it's the Hill.
The Hill, okay, they lean a little right in their opinion, but I see where they're coming from, and that's a good argument to sort of counter this free speech. Let's call it a narrative, right? This free speech narrative in which Elon's driving, and that, hey, people should be allowed to say what they want to say. But the counter argument to saying what you want to say means that there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of abuse out there, there's a lot of threats. And Bertram has said this, I think we've spoken privately. He said, well, if you normalize it, then what does that turn into? And so in reacting to this, coming off of the heels of 2016 with the whole, do we say his name on this podcast? I can't. I don't know anymore. Do we?
Go ahead.
Okay, with the whole Donald Trump era that we and some of those divisions.
Been a while.
The rocky road that a lot of us found ourselves into on these social media channels. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook have clamped down on moderation, so much so that if they see abuse, if they see cyberbullying, which is another culprit, they try and do what's best, right, in the interest of almost everybody, to take some of these abusive behaviors off of there. So whether that comes to banning users or deleting tweets, that's become a little more commonplace. And so so that's the argument against like having unfettered free speech on these platforms, is that when things get a little violent, when things get a little abusive, what are you going to do? Are you just going to let it out there? And if that sparks some flames to snowball into some violent activity in the real world, in the physical world, is Twitter held liable, or any of these social media channels, because they've allowed this speech to perpetuate? And so those are some of the arguments against what Musk is trying to drive.
I really enjoyed. Did you read what the NAACP said?
I read a quote. I didn't read the full statement.
The statement was, and so, as Elon Musk continues to talk about how he is, liberating Twitter for free speech, the NAACP statement said, Mr. Musk, free speech is wonderful. Hate speech is unacceptable. Disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech have no place on Twitter. Do not allow 45 to return to the platform. Do not allow Twitter to become a petri dish for hate speech or falsehoods that subvert our democracy. Protecting our democracy is of utmost importance, especially as the midterm elections approach. Mr. Musk, lives are at risk, and so is American democracy.
Yeah, and so, it's a great statement. And so the counter argument to that is who Twitter is not the government. Who is Twitter to control what people say, delete people from the platform? Yeah. And so, I get at this point, it's almost coming down to a sort of ideology, right? It's so
easy to ban the other ideology, or people that have different ideologies than us, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so right now, it just seems to be that the conservatives, right, have been some of the targets of bans on Twitter and having tweets deleted. And it's not exclusive to them, but I think those sort of characterizing this Twitter takeover from Musk, who's been a little outspoken against some of these progressive and quote unquote woke ideas, that now he's sort of taking the side of the right and will potentially, as you hinted with NAACP's statement, to allow this certain character who I mentioned their name just a few minutes ago. Should I say it again? Should I?
No, you said it enough.
Let the 45th president back on the platform, because if you're sort of rolling back some of these limits, this individual happened to be banned as a result. So if you're rolling that back, then that means you may be opening the door for him to come back. And yeah. So what'd you think of that? What if 45 comes back to Twitter?
45 honestly means nothing to me. Like, the base was there. They were there before he was there. They're gonna get behind DeSantis now, so it's like there's enough crazies. He made them not afraid to show. I almost appreciate Donald Trump. I'll just say it.
Whoa.
I almost appreciate him from that aspect, because I go, he's not the guy. There's so many worse out there that support him that I'm more worried about, Los. There are so many people out there that are exactly like that dude that it's horrible. It's horrifying. Yeah. I didn't know there's 70 million Nazis in our country. Well, in fairness, I did, because they've been here this whole time, because, you know, as these selfish states, what? Since the beginning of the country, Los, we've had Nazis in our country.
Should I
go read 12 Years a Slave? All right, you sit here read about these slave owners and stuff. These people have been here this whole time. They're not going anywhere. They've consistently been whiners talking about states' rights and stuff. And I just like to clarify, which rights you talking about? Go ahead and tell me which specific right are you talking about that you would like to have? And this has been the whole conversation in the entirety of our country. I'm tired of having it. Can we move on and stop promoting these racist Nazi people?
Should I be John Hawley right now and ask you? Josh Hawley, sorry. Should I ask you? Do you believe that America's racist?
I believe Josh Hawley's racist. You're racist just for asking that question because you don't get it, Josh.
Okay, so we were talking about free speech, right? So in the U.S., which this is currently the country we live in, currently.
Yeah, for right now.
The First Amendment.
That new U.S. News and World Report comes out.
The First Amendment of the Constitution, First Amendment of the Bill of Rights of the Constitution, is what grants us the right of free speech, also assembly, also religion. But what does it protect us from, Bertram? Does it protect us from Twitter taking off our accounts or deleting our tweets?
That's a good question. So if you go to uscourts.gov, and I put it in the show notes, there is a awesome site that goes, what does free speech mean? And it says, among other cherished values, the First Amendment protects freedom of speech. The U.S. Supreme Court often has struggled to determine what exactly constitutes protected speech. The following examples are of speech, both direct words and symbolic actions that the court has decided are either entitled to the First Amendment protections or not. So if you're not in this country and you're listening to this might be helpful. So this is basically a history of landmark Supreme Court cases that have kind of said this is what freedom of speech includes currently, I guess, and this is what freedom of speech does not include the right to. Are you ready, Los?
Yes.
Okay. Freedom of speech includes the right not to speak. Specifically the right not to salute the flag, as evidenced by the West Virginia Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943. Freedom of speech includes the right of students to wear black armbands to school to protest a war. Students do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate. Tinker versus Des Moines, 1969. Freedom of speech includes the right to use certain offensive words and phrases to convey political messages. Cohen versus California, 1971.
Let's go, Brandon.
Oh, my goodness.
I hate
Stop
that.
it.
Could you guys stop that? You're not funny, okay? Conservatives, could you please be funny for once? Like, don't get me started on the memes, which we will dedicate a future episode to memes.
Oh man.
But you guys are not funny. Like, that's not funny.
Hey, in fairness, the liberals with that Mike Pence fly thing, that was ugh.
That was stupid.
That was just as
That
bad.
was stupid.
You guys are dumb.
It's a fly on someone's head. Chill out.
Anybody who made a joke about that fly being on Mike Pence's head, you're a dumbass. You should go walk into a lake.
Okay. I didn't go that far.
Well,
but anyway.
while it's storming, go get lightninged. The freedom of speech, you have the freedom to go do that. And I have the freedom to say it. Freedom of speech includes the right to contribute money to political campaigns under certain circumstances. Buckley v. Vallejo, 1976. I don't like that one. Freedom of speech includes the right to advertise commercial products and professional services with some restrictions. Virginia Board of Pharmacy versus Virginia Consumer Council, 1977. And last one, freedom of speech includes the right to engage in symbolic speech, like burning the flag in protest. That is 1990, Texas v. Johnson.
Yes.
That's where we're at so far on what it does include the right to, all right?
What doesn't
Thoughts?
it protect, Bertram?
Okay. Freedom of speech does not include the right to incite imminent lawless action. Brandenburg v. Ohio, 1969.
Like a riot?
Insurrection.
At the Capitol?
Yeah, maybe some, maybe a bunch of kookaburras and their buddies and their deer antlers. They go smear feces over the walls and steal laptops and stuff, and you might not be able to do that. Freedom of speech does not include the right to make or distribute obscene materials. Roth versus United States, 1957. You can't just be handing out pornography on the street corner to some kids. Okay, you can't do that. Freedom of speech does not include the right to burn draft cards as an anti-war protest. U.S. v. O'Brien, 1968. All right,
Sounds a
that's
lot
an
like
interesting
treason.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really? That goes back to January 6th. Freedom of speech does not include the right to permit students to print articles in a school newspaper over the objections of the school administration. Hazelwood School District v. Kuhlmeyer, 1988. That's an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
Can't do that. Freedom of speech does not include the right of students to make an obscene speech at a school-sponsored event. Bethel School District v. Fraser, 1986. And last one, freedom of speech does not include the right of students to advocate illegal drug use at a school-sponsored event. 2007, Morse v. Frederick. So as you can see, we're slowly, and if you're, again, I wonder if you don't live here, this seems super interesting because this is how far we've come in terms of just kind of narrowing down what is freedom of speech and what isn't. And as you can see, we're still super confused on what exactly it constitutes. So we're continuing to try and just kind of narrow down this definition with the help of our Supreme Court. But man, it's not easy because we need a bunch of landmark cases too to just continue to refine this and say, why is this illegal and this isn't?
You mean we don't need more conservative judges to reinforce the values of this country?
We should probably redetermine what our values are first. We still think we're a Christian nation.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, yeah, maybe Twitter's turning Christian.
Well, it can't turn anything, buddy. It's a business. It's a corporation. It doesn't exist. Okay.
But yeah, okay. So
I'm sorry. I apologize.
there was no mention of Twitter in those in your little reading there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you want me to tell you? Okay. Let me do two things first. Let me sound off on my case against Elon Musk buying Twitter. I've given a lot of devil's advocate for this first 30 minutes, but here's my case. I think Elon and other Twitter users overstate the importance of Twitter in our society. And this comes from someone who enjoys using Twitter sometimes. And I just think it's fun and it was innovative and it's cool. I think Twitter is a very niche platform at the same time. When we look at the number of active users, which has recently come under fire because Twitter has found that they were actually overcounting users over the past 3 years.
Oh, that's not
but
good.
all indications have been that the number of active Twitter users have been hovering over just over 200 million users worldwide. Now, 200 million people, that's a lot of people. That's roughly two-thirds of the population of the United States worth of users.
And at some point, I'll have to talk about an article I read about the fact that Twitter is not a very good business.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. And but yeah, so you compare 200 million users roughly to the number of monthly active users on a platform like, I don't know, Facebook. You want to guess the number of active users on Facebook, Bertram?
Man, I don't think I have it right in front of me. I have how much money they made instead.
Okay.
No, I have no idea how many.
This is according to Statista. 2.93 billion monthly active users on Facebook, over 1 billion on Instagram, and on TikTok I'd have to pull up the numbers there, but you get the picture.
Probably way too many, and I'm not one of them.
You get the picture there, right? Compared to Twitter, or Twitter compared to these other platforms,
300,000.
That's small potatoes compared to everyone else. Twitter has less users than Pinterest, than Snapchat.
No.
Yes. Really? YouTube counts as a social network too, which is my favorite, by the way. For those of y'all who don't have YouTube Premium, this is also a non-ad. YouTube Premium is the best thing ever. No ads, get to play in the background. It's really great. For $10 a month, hey, we all heard of the trouble that Netflix is getting into, shedding users, possibly adding ads themselves. Who wants
that?
Not
YouTube, baby.
And so when you have YouTube Premium, you get the best of the best. Sign up for YouTube Premium now. Use the code madmadworld for 50%.
Come on.
No, but YouTube, holler at me if you want any sponsors there, or if you just want to comp my subscription. Anyway, so 2.2 billion users for YouTube, 2.9 for Facebook, 1.4 for Instagram, 1 billion for TikTok, 500 for Snapchat, Pinterest, 480, and then Twitter with that overcounting thing, it's 200 to 300 something.
Jesus.
But yeah, small potatoes. So of all the big social media platforms, Elon Musk, for all of his sort of will and motivation to rebalance democracy with free speech, is buying the smallest, lesser used one. But
interesting.
So my critique comes from the fact that Twitter gets a lot of this drive, and it's a great way to consume like news, because you're basically just getting little links the same way we post in our show notes. That's how Twitter has become so popular, because you just have this feed of a bunch of just little micro news coming across, and it's a great way to do that.
What do I use Reddit for? Hey,
Reddit's great, but it's not used by as many people as the media likes to think it is, because the media is obsessed with Twitter. They think the world is Twitter. One of my pet peeves
That's true.
is when I'm reading an article or watching the news, and then they'll point to what people are saying on Twitter. Like that's what everyone is saying out in the world about anything. And that's what got us in trouble with the whole Trump situation, because they'll always look at what Trump said on Twitter when you could easily just not air it. I get it. He was president, but even before he was president, he didn't have to do that. Like it's so the media and the journalists and all of these they're avid Twitter users. So they'll parade their platform as if it is like standing neck and neck with Facebook and TikTok and all of that. And I'm not trivializing the number of users that are on there, because like I said, I am an active user as well. But it's small potatoes. And I just think that people who have big followings on Twitter, such as Elon Musk, who last time I checked had 88 million followers on Twitter, hey, they'll feel like that's the most important thing in the world, but it's really not. And I just wish that all of this dialogue about Twitter could just kind of die a little bit. Could we just get all of us Twitter users need to just grab a bite of some humble pie and put ourselves back down with Pinterest and Snapchat, because that's where we really belong.
Yeah.
We don't belong with the big guys like Facebook and YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Like we're just not there, y'all. We're just not. So, and Reddit, we're down there with those people. And hey, we could call ourselves great, for being there. And we're the cool kids because we're niche, but we're not like the most popular kids out there. So Elon needs to chill with this. But another thing I wanted to present to you, Bertram, was some of the other changes that Elon Musk is looking to make.
Hey, before we get to that, can I just add to your last argument?
Sure.
You mentioned the difference between, you said Twitter is small potatoes, and I just wanted to add at this point, there's a Vox article that talks about the least of Elon's worries being free speech, is that it's like, man, I don't know how well he's going to do with this. It says in the article, to recap, Twitter's biggest problem as a business, one that it has always struggled with, is that it's a free, ad-supported business that doesn't have enough users to make it attractive to advertisers. Twitter has the same business model, free and supported by advertisers, as Google and Facebook, but it has much, much less reach than those companies for the reasons you just said. So advertisers aren't going to give it that much support. That's why Google brought in, you know how much Google brought in last year? Take a guess.
$50 billion.
$257 billion last year.
Insane.
Facebook brought in $117 billion. Twitter? You want to take a guess?
$3.
$5 billion. You're not far off. So $257 billion from Google, $117 billion revenue from Facebook, and Twitter did $5 billion. And that's why Google is worth $1.7 trillion, Facebook $583 billion, and Twitter $36 billion. And so in this article, and we don't have to go over it, it talks about all the different ways that Elon can make Twitter successful. Bring in more tweeters, sell more expensive ads, sell access to Twitter, sell something else. There was one more. It was cut costs, which apparently a lot of people say he's going to do. I think we have some stuff in the show notes about how people are worried about getting fired. But I just wanted to add on that point where it's like, man, we think of Twitter as, wow, look how huge it is. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And that could be. That's why you talk about the town square. And we're like, well, is it the town square?
Well,
maybe
yeah,
it's not.
And maybe it is because it's a small town. It's a village compared to these big metropolises. Is it metropolises or metropoli? What's the plural for metropolis? I don't know.
I have no idea.
It's a man-man world.
Maybe it's just metropolis. But yeah.
You
wanted to change the subject?
No, well, that was a great segue to where I was going in terms of additional changes that Elon Musk wants to make.
Oh, perfect.
In taking over Twitter. And so, oddly, he wants to make it less dependent on ads. So he said specifically in his tweets, no more ads. And given that Elon Musk, and so I hinted at this at the beginning of the show, that Elon Musk, the way that he's financing this is a little heavy-handed, because we know that Elon Musk is the richest, wealthiest man in the world, but not all of that is liquid. Hardly any of it is liquid, meaning that in order to finance the purchase of Twitter, he needs to sell stock, which he just did yesterday, April 28th. I think he cashed out, I think it was $6 billion in Twitter and Tesla stock.
Wow.
But in addition to that, he can't just take all of it at once. That's just impossible for not just him as a shareholder, but most importantly, him as a CEO and a chairman of the board, because that could crater the valuation of your own company. So in order to finance, he has to get loans from banks, putting his stocks, his wealth as collateral, which is possible for him. Good for him, because he's the wealthiest man in the world. But that's debt, right? And so you have to finance the purchase of this company with debt. And how do you pay the debt off? You need to generate revenue. And so
Sell drugs. Oh, well, never mind.
how are you going to generate revenue through an already comparatively poor revenue driver with as Twitter if you're going to take away the thing that it drives revenue for? And Twitter has recently started a sort of premium service. They call it Twitter Blue. I believe it's $3 a month, which gives you enhanced features. But
like,
are you going to convince everyone to buy Twitter Blue? You know, that's a question.
This is already out?
What, Twitter Blue?
Yeah.
Yes. So Twitter Blue, so some of the features in Twitter Blue, it allows you to undo a tweet within a short period of time. You have enhanced themes and icons. Think of like with Reddit, how with Reddit Premium you get to dress up your little characters a little more. You have bookmarks. There's reader mode for articles. In dedicated customer support, NFT profile pictures, and when the eventual edit button comes to Twitter, which Elon has also been looking at as an enhancement in Twitter, the Twitter Blue customers will get first dibs on that. So, yeah. So, Elon, how's Elon gonna drive more revenue if you're not charging for the service? Because as we have always said, going back to, I believe, what was that, episode 14 or 11 or something like that on the social dilemma, when something is free, that means you're the product, and online that means
good episode.
That means ads are after you. And so how is he going to make more money for Twitter? Another one of his changes is that he wants to make Twitter's algorithms open source. So he wants to post it on GitHub. Do you know what GitHub is, by the way, Bertram?
I've heard of it. I've never been on it.
GitHub is a place where you can just post software, or companies post what they call their source code. So for everyone to see, so people could take a look at the code, look at making improvements, or use that to develop, or so he wants to upload that to GitHub, and for everyone to be able to analyze Twitter's algorithm to see if there's been any nefarious activity, to keep things transparent. And so those are some other changes that he would want to be made. So, but going back to the strong driver, right, is that he wants to delete users as like the last resort. He wants to be able to keep things up, even if you don't like it, because he believes that's sort of the pillars of our democracy.
Yeah. One of the things I wonder about, Los, is that if money's an issue, I read a really good article on Time that talked about Tesla's ambitions in India will test Elon Musk's commitment to free speech. And one of the things that you made me wonder right there is you said, well, how's this guy going to make money with this company? And I said, well, I don't think he really cares if this makes money. But, man, because of Twitter, he sure stands maybe a good chance of pushing Tesla in India. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, well, India is a key market that a lot of companies have been targeting, especially as the Chinese market has matured, right? People are making more money over there, which means low-wage work needs to be found a little elsewhere. Now, Chinese labor is still comparatively lower to many of the other developed countries out there, but it's getting pricier because people are getting richer. So India has been a next frontier for a lot of these places, these companies, and so they're right next door. And Tesla, as they're trying to make moves and becoming the electric car company out there, needs to look at other markets, and so India could be that sort of gateway. But this also goes in line with what Elon has vowed to do, is that he wants to reinforce free speech laws based on the region. And so India is a country, and shout out to India. We have a lot of listeners over the years from India. So thank you. Thank you. But India has different free speech laws.
Problems with their leader.
Yeah, they have different free speech laws than we do here in the U.S. And so how are you going to adjust based on that? And what some critics are saying is that the way that Twitter operates may not look much differently than it does now, and that you have to you have to sort of bend to the laws of other countries. And so how is Elon going to navigate that? And would that sort of diminish his mission that he's going on? And so that remains to be seen.
And in this Time article, it says, last summer, Musk tweeted that Tesla wants to enter the Indian market, but can't because import duties are the highest in the world by far of any large country. Do you know those? I was asking the guy who drills my bowling balls, and I said, don't they have any bowling ball manufacturers in Europe? And he goes, nah, the prices, like the import taxes and all that stuff, all that stuff's way too high, so it doesn't make sense to buy any bowling balls from overseas. I said, really? Because, yeah, we make them all here. Said, go figure. And so when you're talking about duty free and all that stuff, import duties are the highest in the world by far of any large new country. New Delhi has frustrated Musk's ambitions by levying import taxes of 100% on cars worth more than $40,000, 100% lows, and 60% on cheaper vehicles. We're hopeful that there will be at least a temporary tariff relief for electric vehicles, Musk added in another tweet. That would be much appreciated. Yeah, you think? Tesla has proposed an import duty for 40% on electric vehicles, but reports in the Indian press say the government has asked for more assurances of investment in the country. Still working through a lot of challenges with the government, Musk tweeted in January of 2022 after an Indian user asked him when Teslas would be available for purchase. So because they've been having issues with freedom of speech in India, there's talk that maybe there could be like a quid pro quo or something going on between these. I was almost said two countries, but I'm like, man, I guess the company and the country, the man, the company and the country.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know how that would work, because the reason why places have high tariffs on imported goods.
They want to make their own money?
Yeah, they want to make their own markets competitive. And so free market, free trade Los. I'm not
free trade Los.
I don't like tariffs at all. I love me my free trade, because I know how much all of us inherently like to pay lower prices for things. And sure. But I do understand it, right? And that's part of why, we could go on a tangent there about why people want to keep manufacturing jobs in the US, and that's why y'all's former president did what he did with the China trade war. But with this Twitter situation, I just don't see. We spoke about their complications with driving revenue right now, and I just don't see how they could generate enough to be able to bend import tariffs in India to allow Teslas to drive out there. I think Tesla has to be a little more strategic in introducing a lower price car, even more so than the Model 3, which they're working on a lower price car. And so maybe that could be their entryway into the India market. But until then, I just don't see India bending. That's a huge population. What's that? 1.3 billion or something like that. It's just.
Los, as we wind down this episode then, as the left tells us that the sky is falling and the right tells us that this is an absolute glorious return to form, this is not that big of a deal comparatively, right? We shouldn't be talking about this as much. This isn't going to be as big as they're planning it on being, do you think? Is this how urgent is this?
It's not urgent, but it's newsworthy. And it's newsworthy because it's a true test, right? It's a test, and now we could maybe call Elon Musk the Ronald Reagan of
oh my God
of social media right now, because he's going to implement this sort of laissez-faire approach to content moderation and overall running a social media network or social network media platform in a way that we haven't seen in around a decade, right? And so we're going in the landscape a decade ago where cyberbullying and misinformation, disinformation, that was just normal and we accepted it, but many people got hurt and some weird events happened along the way and some unfortunate ones. But now that we know we're not okay with that kind of stuff, but people have felt like they've been pushed out as a result, now if we return to form, what's that going to look like? And I think it's unclear as to what it will look like. And that's why we have to talk about it. And $44 billion, okay, in the grand scheme of things, with your Facebook, Twitter, I have Facebook,
Sure.
YouTube.
That was helpful. That was a helpful comparison. I'm glad I put that in the show notes.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's not big in the grand scheme of things, but it's still $44 billion. That's still a lot of money.
I would like that money.
Yeah. But at the same time, it may not be as different it may not be so different as what billionaires and very rich millionaires, if we're looking in the last century or so, have traditionally done. They've bought newspapers. This goes back to the Hearst families. It goes back to, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Steve Jobs' widow owns the Atlantic.
And that was going to be my last question too, Los, was now do you feel like this is a really important time that how we consume media and how we consume news is all being bought by the most popular people in the world, the most powerful people in the world? That could be a problem, right?
But it always has. That's what I'm arguing, is that this has always been the case. Fair. And so who owns the Wall Street Journal, right? Rupert Murdoch, so you've always had these sort of impresarios owning these things. And I think a social media platform is like the next newspaper. And so Elon Musk is just doing a different version of what has always been done. And so we'll really see how this goes. So where we go from here, if you haven't used Twitter before, I don't know if this is a time to think about doing it now. Twitter, it's a skill, like to be able to tweet. And that's why it's so niche. And that's why a lot of people don't have the tolerance for it, is because it's sort of high volume and it's short, right? You're only limited to 280 characters. And yeah, just the frequency of it and the way it's formatted, it's not for everyone. And so don't worry about it if you're not a Twitter user. And yeah, don't cave to this, because like I said, the media is obsessed with Twitter for some reason, because they're users and they think, this is the world to them. But we just have to see how this goes.
They can immediately take here's what the public thinks about this. And they say, hot guy 65 over here says, see, look, we told you.
I hate that. And this is someone who respects journalism. I love that craft. I think it's very important. But it just is so lazy when they just lean on what's being said on Twitter. And hey, BuzzFeed, I'm looking at you too. When you always just look at subreddits, you look at the Ask Reddit board, and then you repost those topics as articles.
Yahoo.
Yeah, don't do that. But yeah, so we'll just have to see how this one goes. But this is an illustration of how mad this world is. But Bertram.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Any final thoughts? Any final words?
Nah, man, you did a great job, as always, though. As always. Didn't Los do a great job, everybody?
Thank you. It is past 12. It's almost 12:30 Bertram's time. So
I'm falling asleep.
He's almost gone. So I'd like to thank you for listening, hanging in there, tuning in first. You had to hear what we had to say about this Elon Musk Twitter situation. So hope you got something out of it. Please follow us or subscribe to us on whatever podcasting app you use. And if it allows, leave a review, leave a rating. I know Spotify just introduced ratings not too long ago. So, hey, there's 5 stars there. Why don't
leave some money?
Leave some for us. tip us if you can. Help us buy more licorice. And follow us on social media. MadMadWorldPod is where you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Reddit. You can go to our website, madmadworldpod.com. And if you have even more to say, if you want to say hi, if you want to say bye, if you want to ask why to both Bertram and I, shout us out.
Baby.
Shout us.
That's the new one. You just added another one.
Shout us out. hello@madmadworldpod.com. That's where you can email us. And yeah, just get the word out. But on behalf of Bertram, I am Los. And don't forget that it is a mad world. Bye-bye.